One thing that comes up with arrays that just seems to throw new programmers for a little bit of a loop, if you'll pardon that pun, is when we ask you to create an array that holds objects. And it turns out you've been doing this all along because in Java strings are objects, and I think you've probably been creating arrays of strings all along. But when it comes to designing a class of your own and then making an array that holds objects of that type, there's something about that students sort of have trouble understanding how to interact with those objects within the array. So that's what we're going to take a look at here. Now, I'm assuming that you already know what arrays are and a basic understanding of what they do, that you can use arrays on a basic level, and that you can write loops to do things like traversals. If you don't know all of that stuff, you need to stop here and go watch those videos. But once you are back, from doing that, then we'll jump in and write some code. I'm going to be using this dog class that I literally just wrote right before I hit record and is probably filled with errors that I will discover as we go. But the idea here is I want to create an array that holds dog objects. Okay, it's the same basic concept no matter what kind of object we're working with. So I am going to create a dog array. Call it dogs, equals new dog 3. Okay, now, no matter how we cut this, no matter how we do this, we're going to have some typing to do. So I can only save you so much typing with our array tricks, but let's see kind of both ways we can do this. So this is the first way we learn to deal with arrays. I'm going to say dogs index 0 equals new dog. Now I have to call that constructor, and the constructor, it says we need a name, so Fido, and we need to know the dog's age. I'm going to say that Fido is 4. And now dog's index 1 is new dog Rover, and Rover is 2. And dogs 2 is going to be a new dog with the name Spike, and Spike is going to be 8. Okay, so I have now created an array of dogs, and I have put dogs into it. And again, the idea is that students sometimes think that there's some trick here, but look what we did. This is no different than saying dog D1 equals new dog Fifi, okay, age 4. It's the same thing. In fact, I'm going to move this up here above so it's kind of out of the way. It's the same thing. It's just another object. These are just additional instances of the dog class. The only difference is we're putting them into an array instead of a dog variable, so to speak. Let's go ahead and do a quick traversal here to see if that works correctly. And I'm going to pause the video for this. And through the magic of video technology, I have typed a quick little traversal here. And let's run this and see what we get. So we're back to that idea that when we print just an object, we don't get any information from inside the object. But we have some getter methods that will let me have access to that stuff. I've got get name, get age, check the smell. I can call those the same way I would call it on a regular variable, right? So if I wanted to print out D1's name, I would just say D1.getName. Well, it's going to be the same thing, except instead of D1, I'm going to say dogs index I.getName. All right, and I'm going to delete that line of code that I don't really need. But again, trying to emphasize this potentially confusing idea that these are just dog objects now that we happen to have put into an array, and we just use this slightly different syntax to manipulate them or to work with them. So far, so good. Let's take a quick look at how we created this array though, because like I said, there's a lot of typing, and we can't really do much about that. You have to provide the information that's necessary to instantiate these dogs. But there are a couple other things to be aware of here. One of them is, if I make that bigger, I can assign a dog object, an existing dog object, to our array. So I remember I created Fifi up here and just put Fifi into a variable called D1. I can add D1 to the array because it's the right data type, right? It's a dog. And so now when we traverse, we should see Fifi's name on there as well. It didn't save us any time, but it is something that comes up every once in a while. You have an object already, let's put it into an array. But the one you might be wondering about is, okay, how about that initialization list? Does that save us any work? It does save us a little bit, but it is potentially confusing the way the syntax works. Let's comment out all of that, and let's try this with an initialization list. So I'm going to say dogs equals, we've got this list now, I'll put the semicolon before I forget it. I can put, for example, an existing dog object. I can put Fifi in there, right, as part of my initialization list. And there's Fifi. But I can also just put new instantiations in there. So I can just take an instantiation statement, new dog Fido, new dog Rover. And I'll stop there because I'm running out of space on my screen here as I try and show different things. So I can still use that initialization, but I can't get around using the word new and calling that dog constructor to create those dogs. And then just one last demonstration of this idea of using these just like you would use any other objects is, let's say we want to have Fido play outside, and playing outside makes the dog not smell good. That's what that method does. So it's the same thing we've been doing, but just through repetition, trying to emphasize that. So that's going to be the index is 0, 1 is Fido. So index 1 is Fido dot play outside. And even Visual Studio Code recognizes that this is just a dog object. So the kind of IntelliSense, they call it, the autocorrect feature, offers that as a potential solution. System.out.println dogs1 dot get. Remember what did I make a getter for that? Oh, check smell I called it because I was being weird with my names. Check smell. And check smell returns a string and says Fido stinks. Well, if I didn't have him play outside, and I run it, then he smells clean. So it's just another example of how, don't let the fact that we've put these objects into an array, don't let that throw you off. You're still just working with objects. The only thing that's different is this array syntax. We're going to create an array based on that dog data type, that dog class, and then we're going to populate it with instantiated dog objects. There really isn't anything else to say about the idea of using arrays of objects. I guess, it could never end, right? Another thing I could show you is how do you make a class, an object that has an array as one of its fields, as one of its instance variables. I'm not going to ask you to do that in CIS 150AB, which is what I'm recording this video for. So I'm not going to get into that here. But the idea is we're just trying to emphasize that these arrays are really just variables or objects that are bundled together into a data structure. And if we use that square bracket syntax, we can access them and work with them just like any other object or variable. If you have any questions about that, go ahead and reach out.